Well, hello, everybody. Hope all is well. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another edition of the Lives and Lessons Learned of 100 Christians. My wife, Nicole, her maiden name was Chapin. Today, we're doing someone named Samuel Chapin, known as Deacon Sam. He was actually Nicole is a descendant of Deacon Sam. All of the Chapins in the United States could trace their lineage back to this one guy, Samuel Chapin, from 1598 to 1675, a long time ago. He was a foundational figure in the early colonial New England period whose deep Puritan faith profoundly shaped his life, legacy, and leadership in Springfield, Massachusetts. As a deacon and a selectman, I think that's like a councilman, community pillar, his Christian convictions, rooted in his strict Calvinist theology of the Puritan movement, guided his actions and left an enduring work on his family and society. His influence is evident in colonial records, his church roles, and the lasting impact on his descendants, many of whom carried forward his faith-driven ethics. Christian influence on his life. His faith was forged in the crucible of early 17th century England, where Puritans sought to reform the Church of England from perceived Catholic corruptions. Born in Devon, where he was raised in a Protestant family during a time of religious persecution under King James I and Charles I, this environment drove his decision to join the Great Migration, sailing with his wife Cicely and their children to seek a pure Christian community in New England. His commitment to Puritan ideals, sola scriptura, which means scripture alone, covenant theology, and a disciplined moral life, that's what the Puritans were about, purity, Puritans, defined his identity, and later as a founder of Springfield, Massachusetts, around 1642. As a deacon in Springfield's First Congregational Church from 1645 until his death, he embodied the Puritan ideal of the visible saint, a believer whose life reflected God's elect. His role involved leading worship, distributing alms, and enforcing church discipline, ensuring the community adhered to its biblical standards. As a commissioner or magistrate, he integrated faith into governance, arbitrating disputes, enforcing moral codes like fines for Sabbath breaking. So there's some legalism that comes into this. And overseeing public welfare, which is support for the poor. His governance reflected the Puritan belief in a covenant community under God's law, blending church and civic duties seamlessly. His faith was practical, seen in his farming, land management, and his family life. He deeded extensive lands to his sons, reserving only a small interest for himself and Cicely, his wife, reflecting biblical stewardship and humility. His willingness to accept a minor fine of 1 shilling in 1653 for breaching a town's order shows his submission to communal accountability, a hallmark of Puritan ethics. During Springfield's floods, the Native American tensions, and the 1675 burning during the King Philip's War, his steady leadership mirrored trust in divine providence, again, which is a core Puritan tenet or belief. His influence extended through his family, raising 7 children in a godly household, likely with daily Bible readings and prayers, as was the Puritan custom. Descendants like abolitionist Harry Beecher Stowe and Presidents Grover Cleveland and William Howard Taft carried forth his legacy of faith-driven service. The deacon, which is a statue of Deacon Sam, by Augustus St. Gaudens, depicting him with the Bible, symbolizes his spiritual leadership during inspiring generations to live worthy of such a father, which is the inscription. So there's a famous statue called the Puritan, and it's modeled after him, and that's the inscription at the bottom. Worthy of such a father. Influence and legacy. While he left no personal writings, his influence is documented in colonial records and genealogies. There's some books about that. These portray him as a model Puritan whose faith shaped Springfield's moral and civic fabric, His role in the church fostered a community centered on worship and scripture, influencing early American congregationalism, and I think you could say even the country as a whole. His influence lies in his embodiment of the Puritan work ethic, again, covenant theology, which shaped New England's culture, which again, obviously influenced our country. His life exemplified the belief that faith must be lived out in community, work, and family, influencing later evangelical movements. His statue's inscription, "Lives and Deeds Worthy of Such a Father," captures his call to faithful stewardship. All right, other lessons we can learn. Live faith through faithful service, or a live faith through faithful service, either one. As deacon and selectman, he served church and town, showing faith is active in daily duties, including farming, governing, and aiding the poor, building God's kingdom. His role was to conscientiously discharge trust for religion and order. I'm going to go back to James 2, a faith without works is dead. So you want to live out your faith. Uphold God's law in community. Samuel enforced moral codes and arbitrated disputes, reflecting the Puritan covenant to live under Scripture, urging believers to foster godly societies. Deuteronomy 6, do what is right in God's eyes. And the records note, here's a quote, "He ordered the affairs for the good and purity of the town. Trust divine providence in trials, facing frontier dangers and war. His leadership showed reliance on God's sovereignty, teaching Christians to persevere through hardship and faith." Someone wrote about him, his life trusted God amid the howling wilderness. Model humility and stewardship. Again, he deeded land to his sons and accepted fines humbly. He lived as a steward of God's gifting, urging believers to prioritize others' welfare over our own personal gain. Raise a godly legacy through family. His children and descendants carried his faith, showing that raising families in biblical truth sows seeds for generations in impact. Again, that statue inscription says, "Deeds worthy of such a father." All right. Lasting impact or legacy. His influence lies in his embodiment of Puritan ideals, faith as action, community as covenant, and perseverance as worship. His role as deacon shaped Springfield's spiritual life, fostering a church-centered community that influenced New England's religious culture. His descendants' contributions for emolition to governance reflect its faith. I think that's all I want to say. Take care. God bless. Bye.